Here, The Sand Pebbles is a film that was produced in 1965 and released in the summer of 1966, starring Steve McQueen. The Sand Pebbles. What does it say about society then, and what does it say about what's going on today? Is there still residue from that time today? The Sand Pebbles, adapted from a 1962 novel by author Richard McKenna, right?
Right.
Details a Yangtze River gunboat left over from the Spanish-American War, designated to protect American interests during the nationalist expansion of 1925 to 1927. So let's go back a little bit, right? The White Army, the backstory, headed by Chiang Kai-shek, KMT, Kuomintang is the name of the organization that he was involved with, opposed the Bolsheviks, right? Now, the Bolsheviks was a communist movement in Russia, right? But there were Chinese who called themselves the Bolsheviks. They studied at university in Moscow, and they were called the 28 Bolshevik students. They brought back the philosophies of communism to China. So let's read on. A Chinese group of students who studied at Moscow Sun Yat-sen University, who were communists and against. In 1927, a year after the film is based, Chiang carried out a purge of thousands of communists and dissidents. His quote was, "I'd rather kill 1,000 innocents than to allow one communist to escape," right? But what's funny about when he said he would allow only he wouldn't want one communist to escape, that he would kill him up. He killed up communists, quote unquote, that looked like him, but allowed Caucasian ones to escape. Does that sound familiar, people? Does that sound familiar, like how some people will go against their own, but let other people live who espouse the same things?
Yeah.
Let's go back even further. Between 1913 and 1928, Russia went through a turmoil. In 1917, involvement in World War I ended with the Volkovich Revolution. Later would influence the Chinese Revolution of 1927, which ensued a 22-year war in China that would see the rise of the government of the People's Republic of China after the defeat of Chiang's White Army by the Chinese Communist Red Army. This is the backdrop, which leads to the fictional telling of a fictional ship called the Sand Pebble, whose crew members are affectionately called the Sand Pebbles. That's the history first. The telling of the story set in an ensemble cast aboard a ship as China is on a tipping point while telling America's limited military involvement, other than providing weapons to the nationalists, right? Is an informing past history which instructs us today. The history then instructs us today because you'll see where an army will go to no end, a government will go to no end to keep the status quo. Take, for instance, what happened in Tiananmen Square, right? Let me bring this up. In Tiananmen Square, back in 1989. See, all of this is residual. When you see people still talking about the same things. The United States government, they're going at China right now. When you see them going and talking the same things still, you'll find that nothing has really changed. It's just bubbling under, and it's residuals from what was happening back then, so long ago. So check this out. This is from Tiananmen Square, 1989. This was my summer before going to senior year, to graduation. Do you remember this, people? Remember the tanks rolled down the Tiananmen Square? Remember the students were looking to be free from communism. They wanted a democratic government, right? And as this was happening, remember the guy, he stood in front of the tank, right? Now, in between June 4th, 1989 and June 5th, 1989, the Communist Army came in and indiscriminately started shooting at the students, and it was considered a massacre, right? Because the communists started from students. So you have to understand the history. The Communist Party, the current Communist Party that is there now, that's in leadership, started from a student revolution. So they understand that from the youth, things can move. So as you see, this guy gets up on the tank, and you can hear in the background, we have it down low for the reasons, for copyright reasons, but you can hear the people clapping and yelling in the back, the students. But it would be just a few before the Communist Army came in and indiscriminately bowled these kids down. And guess what? The communist government still exists today in China. Nothing has really switched or changed from this heroics that this person was doing. See that? See there? We hear gunfire. You hear the gunfire, and he's moving off because they're getting ready to shoot. Right? So they're getting ready to shoot.
He saw how serious.
So they saw how serious, because when it comes down to it, they understand that they can be taken over by students, because it was a student movement that started. So understanding history from the past informs you today about what could possibly happen, right?
Right.
America was on the, oh man, I cannot read my, right? So America was neutral, really, other than to help the nationalist side that was defeated by the communists, and that's what brings about the dislike or the displeasure of the communists, the People's Republic of China, because the communists defeated their ally, which was the nationalist government, right? Roosevelt, Churchill, interesting history, Japan, etc. Japan was also involved. Second, Steve McQueen as motor machinist, mate first class. Jake Holman is the catalyst who changes the culture of the boat from one of dependence on the Chinese help called coolies to a rude awakening that the shipmates need to depend on each other in Yangtze River, in the Yangtze River Patrol. The river patrols ran from 1854 to 1954 to protect the Yangtze treaty that the United States had gotten in with one section of China. In between, 4 stories told, which Hellman is is central in telling between ensemble cast. 1. His story of respect and love for a missionary named Shirley Eckhart, portrayed by 19-year-old Candice Bergen. Remember, we was trying to figure out who that was, and then we looked at it. His relations, his relations as head, strong subordinate to ship's captain, Lieutenant Collins, portrayed by Richard Crenna. 3. His friendship with star-crossed machinist second class Frenchie, portrayed by Lord Richard Attenborough, whose character falls in love with a bar hostess, Molly, portrayed by Chinese bar hostess, portrayed by Emmanuel Arsan, right? And then the 4th story, his rocky cohabitation on and off the ship with his boatmates who don't like his meddling to the point of possible mutiny on the boat. What's great about it is the battle sequences in the film. The battle sequence in the film is one of the best we've seen. It leaves you on the edge of your seat as you uncover the seat shot from your POV. The closing sequence when Holman yells, "What the hell happened?" will stay in your mind as real as it would be if it were you, right? So the Sand Pebbles, right? A movie that you must see. So let's break this down. Story, plot, through line 10, ensemble cast 10, believability 10, editing and soundscape 10, acting, emoting 10, character arc 10, the use of Hong Kong as Young-Sung Riverport as a living, breathing character, that's a 10, wardrobe 10, battle sequence 10, the Sand Pebbles starring Steve McQueen is a 10, right?